Right now, you're probably wondering what in the world any of this has to do with dog training. I'm sure you were expecting some techniques and tips you could use to help you as you try to train your dog, or in the very least some demos to show the neat tricks and awesome feats that I can accomplish. Seriously, why would I make this my first video knowing it may be the only one people see as they move on to find something more interesting? I'll put it simply. I chose this topic because I think it is one of the most important things you can learn right now. Furthermore, I can't bear the thought of attempting to show you a new training tool while the most important one you could ever use sits and rots on the shelf. What we're about to talk about decides everything. I think there is a lot of incomplete logic among dog trainers. They're ready to talk about how dogs are pack animals and will tell you it's important to train all your dogs if you have more than one. The observant will also tell you that you, the human, are just as much part of the pack as any of your dogs. Many will preach for eons about how it must be the human's fault for any issues the dog may have. Why? Because the human is the weak link, the one that creates and or allows the imbalances in the first place, right? Simple logic. Where then is the help for the human? I don't necessarily disagree. We humans and the way we do things are the culprit for most of our dogs' quirks. The dysfunction is exacerbated by the conclusions we tend to draw based on misunderstanding what is meant by at fault. The difference is in the intent. Passively, we mess up our dogs all the time due to our tendency to regard them as human. While we mean well, we don't tend to understand dogs well. However, when we hear words like fault or blame, we tend to treat ourselves as if our actions were intentional. Don't you see, fool? I know exactly what my dog needed all along. I intentionally deprived him of it so that I could watch him die. I meant to kill him from the inside out. From there, our perspective is entirely lost. We start blaming ourselves for things that have nothing to do with us and are too blinded by our guilt to take the opportunities we get to change the things we can. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We tell ourselves, I'm worthless. When opportunities come, we don't follow through because I'm worthless. When things get worse, we say, I knew it. Look at how worthless I am. The cycle just stays on repeat. When we do finally find the courage to try again, we never try the right thing and lose hope further when that doesn't work either. That's like a baseball pro trying to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball with a hockey stick. Even should the miraculous happen and our slugger actually make contact with the ball, that hockey stick would shatter like glass hit by a hammer. He was doomed before he started, but it was because he didn't have the right tools. Nobody really likes that word, failure. Just hearing it cuts a little. Yet somehow it's where you find yourself, again. Why and how are questions you've asked 1,000 times, and now all hope is faded. You take one of two options. Blame the dog or blame yourself. I know you've probably heard from everywhere that it's not the dog's fault. Let's be honest. There is no such thing as a bad dog. Dogs are born with everything they need to be dogs, and if left to their own devices in their natural environment, would readily demonstrate just how suited they are at being more than just a good dog. Your dog is a great dog. He's a bad human. But can he be faulted for that? Not fairly. There are many millions of people who will readily cry out in the defense of the dog. But is it fair to simply say, oh, it must be the human's fault? Now wait just 1 minute. How fair is it to blame a human for being a human? How realistic is it to expect that we, as humans, flawed by our very definition, could ever expect to act as though we have no flaws? No. We are unequivocally, irrevocably, perfectly human. So who's to blame? Are you ready for this? Nobody. That's right, nobody. It's not about faults per se. It's about communication. Like someone from China meeting someone from Mexico for the first time, there will be misunderstandings, but neither is inherently wrong. You and your dogs are living at the intersection of human culture and dog nature. How can you, the human, just be at fault if you're not even from the same species? No, it's just a matter of differences. The real key is figuring out how to get what you want into a language your dog can understand. There is one caveat, however. While we aren't necessarily the ones to blame for the different quirks our dogs come with, we are responsible for their outcome. When it comes to dogs, you should never ever blame yourself for things you don't know. However, just like school, you should always be learning, and once you learn something, you are responsible for that knowledge. Sometimes, what you learn is something you can do better. Sometimes it's that you need to find someone to help you. But so long as you act on what you learn, you are doing the most anyone can ask of you. Yes, our dogs have issues. Yes, we want to help them. But how? I know you've heard 1,000 different training secrets and seen 1,000 different special training tools, but take it from me. The best training tool you can get is not for sale, and the only secret is how to use it properly. What is it? It's not so much a it as it is a who. You. But wait, earlier we mentioned how we as humans are flawed by definition. How effective can defective hope to get? True, there is a problem, and many rush to say that people are the problem. No, people have the problems. We can also be the source of the solutions. True, we can never hope to be perfect, but there are blockages we can remove that stop us from being our best. We just need to get out of our own way. Now everyone knows pride is a huge problem and must be addressed whenever found. But the biggest obstacles I have ever found stopping a client from being the great leader I know they could be all fall into the category of guilt. Pride most often motivates us to act when we shouldn't, whereas guilt, like fear, is debilitating and stops us from acting when we can and should. It would be more accurate to say false guilt. When appropriate, guilt can drive us to make decisions and changes needed to right the wrongs we've committed. False guilt, on the other hand, makes you blame yourself for things you haven't done or takes more blame than is right for things you have done. False guilt will even seek out blame on its own, creating blame that doesn't exist and taking it too. True guilt is your friend. Denying it will drive you insane. False guilt is a relentless foe. Accepting it will drive you insane or even kill you. So how do we beat this? How do we inspire ourselves to greatness when nothing less will do? We can start with identifying some of the main outcomes when we get discouraged and looking at some of the things we can do to overcome when we lose hope. Nothing can ravage a heart quite like rejection can. The most penetrating wounds are the ones that come from a loved one. No, your dog is not a human. But when they hurt your feelings, the pain is just as bad. Why? Because the hurt is in your heart. Rejection can mar your self-image, debase your confidence, and ravage your hopes. How can anyone hope to beat this? When it comes to people rejecting us, it's most often because that person doesn't know how to love. Their lack of love reveals that they are not emotionally whole. Their rejection only lays bare the hole in their own heart. With dogs, it should be more apparent because they can't hate. That doesn't mean it won't feel like it, but they have no capacity for it. In the words of Robin DiAngelo, there is no such thing as pure feeling. You have a feeling because you have filtered the experience through a particular lens. The feeling is the outcome. It probably feels natural, but of course it is shaped by what you believe. We're going to be coming back to that quote quite fairly often in this episode, but for now we're talking about how it relates to feelings of rejection. The battle here is going to be changing your perspective and to stop taking your dog's behavior personally. Their misbehavior, no matter how savage, has nothing to do with you. Realize that it is the void within their own heart that restricts them from accepting yours. Understand that there is a light at the other end of the tunnel, and your dog can and will accept you wholeheartedly once they have been restored to balance. You may feel worthless or even helpless at times, but that doesn't mean you are. And don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise, even you. Dog ownership can reduce anxiety, provide companionship, increase motivation and productivity, release endorphins, extend your life expectancy, improve your general quality of life, and serve as a fantastic date magnet. But it can also be a living hell. You can't go on a vacation because your dog may destroy your house. You can't take a dangerous toy or food item from your dog because he might bite you. You can never have guests over while your dog is in the house. Have some of your friends or family that used to visit more often stopped coming by since you got your dog? Has your own lifestyle improved or degraded since your dog became a part of the picture? When it comes to your dog, do you do the things you do because you want to or because you have to? It can be nerve-wracking when you find yourself caught between what you would never do and what you could never do. The frustration and anxiety that comes from such a relationship only goes to fuel itself further as it drives you insane. It seems it's always accompanied by the great need to do something. The one thought that continues to cross your mind is, I don't want to live like this. Rejection is a tough battle itself, but in the struggle against codependent habits, there's an added dimension. You're going to have to fight yourself. True, you don't want to live like this, but you're afraid of change. You occasionally complain about your dog's behavior, but you fight when others complain about it. It doesn't matter how they intended it. You see it as an attack and often find yourself fighting for reasons you don't know in defense of behavior you know is wrong. Honestly, is there any truth to what others have said? Sometimes other people can say things that are all or partially emotionally charged, but your defense is almost exclusively emotional. You feel hurt, attacked even. I'm not questioning the reality of your feelings. Each heart knows its own pain. I am, however, questioning their validity. Most often, it's only the ones that love us who care enough to tell us the truth when they notice something that may harm us. Does it really follow that they're just trying to hurt us? If they care so much about us, can they really be so careless when it comes to the things we love? Ask yourself, how many lies have I told to protect the reputation of the one with the destructive habit? Consider this again. There is no such thing as pure feeling. You have a feeling because you have filtered the experience through a particular lens. The feeling is the outcome. It probably feels natural, but of course it is shaped by what you believe. There's a story about a hound dog laying on a porch. He seems to be sleeping, but every 5 minutes or so he lifts up his head, howls, and then lays his head back down. When people ask what's wrong with him, his owner tells them the truth. He's laying on attack. He doesn't like it, so he voices his displeasure, occasionally, but he doesn't hate it enough to move. So he just sits there. It doesn't take a genius to see where I'm going here. You're sitting on attack and it's uncomfortable. Occasionally, you complain about it, but you've never done anything about it. I believe the reason why you get stuck here in denial is that you don't realize that you deserve better. You don't believe you deserve better than this love-hate relationship you have with your dog. You blame yourself for their behavior in a very unhealthy way and allow guilt to stop you from seeing clearly. You believe that disagreeing with your dog's behavior means you hate your dog, and when people complain about your dog's behavior, you can only hear hatred for your loved one. Here's the truth. It is both possible and okay to love your dog to death while absolutely hating their behavior. You have to remove the misplaced guilt that's blocking your view. As your sight is restored, you'll see that your dog doesn't enjoy it either. Dogs don't like freaking out whenever a trash bag blows by, and least of all do they want to be separated from or excluded from your life. You just have to love your dog enough to hate their bad behavior. Only then can you restore your relationship to the quality you both deserve. So what can you do? Make it your goal to acquire a healthy relationship for both your sakes. Make a real plan to reach your goal, which may be as simple as deciding to get a trainer to help. Make a commitment for both your sakes and set healthy terms and healthy limits. Only accept what is healthy. Nothing more, nothing less, and nothing else. A healthy desire to do your best can often motivate you to accomplish things previously thought impossible. When that drive is undernourished, you tend to slouch and settle for mediocrity. However, when that drive is overvalued, the need to be perfect becomes slavery. Your accomplishments are only a mere step, and your failures are monuments set up for the world to see. A few questions. When it comes to your dogs, do you do the things you do because you want to or because you feel you have to? Does your dog's bad behavior bother you, or are you more bothered because it feels like the world is watching and judging? Are you judging yourself? How about this? You're trying to accomplish something. Your dog messes it up. You get frustrated, but continue to try anyway. Your dog does worse. You get more frustrated, but keep trying. Eventually, you explode in a cacophony of frustration and despair. Frustration because you feel like you're failing. Despair because there doesn't seem to be a solution in sight. This is where the guilt comes in. You take failures personally and you blame yourself in a very unhealthy way. For a while, this motivates you and you aim to prove all the voices of condemnation wrong, all the while knowing in the back of your mind it's more fear that they may be right. I consider this much like a voyage of the damned. The truth is that it was doomed from the start. From the very moment you decided you had to be perfect before you matter. You're human. It's not just illogical, it's also entirely unfair to hold yourself to a standard that no human ever has, ever will, or even can attain to. Let me be clear, there's nothing wrong with striving for excellence. In fact, we always should. Like the child who aims to improve his handwriting, we have a good goal. The problem is that perfection comes into the classroom, snips the end off the eraser, he won't need that, and sits with a sword over the desk, ready to chop his hands off for the slightest mishap. Your dog is a dog. Second of all, your dog is only a dog and will never be anything else. He can only perform what he has been taught and will always require guidance from a leader. Many people attach titles to their dog and only recognize the title. Take for instance the protection canine, specifically chosen because he's alpha. Treated as though alpha means something other than alpha dog. If it's not fair to hold yourself to a standard of human perfection, how much more illogical would it be to hold your dog up to that same standard when he's not even the same species? Our aspiring writer analogy fits here too, but in a way that's far more sinister. You see, this time, we are the ones that come into the classroom, snip the eraser off, and stand with a sword over the desk ready to chop our pet's paws off for the slightest mishap. A dog has just as much a chance of writing perfect English with naught but paws as he does of fulfilling the incredible standards we put on him and ourselves. You must give yourself the opportunity, the freedom to fail. Personally, I can tell you that I never learned how to win until I learned how to lose. I believe the trouble is that you decided you had to be perfect before you matter. You must realize that you matter. It doesn't matter what other people say. It's not based on your performance, accomplishments, or failures. You matter because you matter. If you pause long enough to open your eyes, your dog will prove it to you. Just watch his tail. So how do we fix our tendency to self-sabotage? First, acknowledge the truth, but nothing more. What you've been doing hasn't been working. Now stop right there. It's true, we screw up our dogs every day, but that doesn't make us screw-ups. Don't take failures as value statements. Just because you make mistakes doesn't make you a mistake. Acknowledge your mistake, but don't read too much into it. Next, make the necessary changes. Find out what works and do that. If that baseball player we spoke of earlier stops assuming he himself is the failure, that's great, but can you imagine what happens when you give him a bat instead of that old hockey stick? Sounds simple enough, so why don't we do this naturally? I believe it's because we get two things out of perspective: our self-worth and our identity. Sometimes things don't go as we hope. It's a part of life. However, no failure or loss, no matter how huge, should ever be grounds to question our value as a human. I'm not just saying that, it's not even good logic. So why is it always the first thing we do? I believe we end up questioning our self-worth because we look for it in the wrong things. It must be in something constant. Everyone knows no bank account will ever outlast the bank. Yet we look for our value in things like performance, the things we own, how people view us, a job title, a paycheck, a house, etc. All temporal things that were never designed to last. Your self-worth is your hope and will need to be placed in something secure and unchanging. Life itself is a whirlwind, and your relationship with your dog is no exception. There will always be things that come against you to challenge you and break you down. If your self-worth can be broken, then you will fall. If your self-worth cannot be broken, then no matter how the rest of your life may seem, you will stand. I absolutely love The Lion King. It's one of my favorite Disney movies. In it, we find a young lion who, through various struggles, loses himself, and we join him in his struggle to become the king he was all along. My favorite quote is also the most piercing challenge in the whole movie. Mufasa confronts his son Simba, our lost hero, in the midst of his despondency. "You are more than what you have become," he says. Our self-worth is what we make it. Our identity, however, is set and unchanging. The real question is, will we act like it? So I ask, who are you? False guilt and unsecured self-worth will go a long way to cloud your sight of your identity, but it cannot change it. Sometimes we have to take the advice the monkey Rafiki gave Simba and look harder. I believe, first, in all eternity, of all the people he could have created, God made you. He didn't just make a human, he made you. Therefore, you are important beyond words because he would have it no other way. Second, he made your dogs and through various means brought you together. This was no accident. You are his. In case you still doubt your value, he says you are to die for. And you are your dog's owner. By his plan, you are their leader and guide, and they are your charge. You are, by his design, equipped with more potential than any special tool or training secret ever can be. We may not always act like it, but that doesn't change our identity any more than acting like a meerkat/warthog made Simba one. In the words of Mufasa, remember who you are. There's a story about a lady stranded on an island. Alright, it's a blonde joke. But this one has a fantastic point. You see, she's much like us. She's got a sizable problem, being stranded on an island some 50 miles from the mainland. She wasn't alone at first, but the brunette that was with her drowned while trying to swim to the mainland. She only made 20 miles. There was a redhead too. She swam 35 miles, got tired, and drowned. The blonde, on the other hand, swam 48 miles. She was so close she could even see the beach. However, she too got tired, so she swam back to the island. I believe this is a perfect example of us when it comes to working with our dogs. We never give ourselves a chance to see what we can do. Why? Not because the dog is too difficult, but because we don't believe in ourselves to begin with. We get so focused on the wrong goals that we never consider how many times we accomplish the right ones. We can't see our wins. We pout when things go awry in the struggle and doubt ourselves when the real war was in mustering up the courage to try in the first place. As I said before, we are human, and that means we will make mistakes. But should that stop us from trying? Never. So how can we succeed after failing for the 1000th time? There is a wrong way and a right way to respond to the disappointments that puncture our esteem and hurt our heart. First, in order to respond the right way, we'll have to change our perspective. We need to develop a healthy view of failure. When it comes to your dog, always remember that setbacks are opportunities to learn and improve. You will have disappointments and setbacks all the time, but with those comes the choice. Will you throw up your hands and give up, which changes nothing? Or will you take the opportunity to learn from it and try again? Thomas Edison had over 5,000 failures before he found the right combination for the light bulb. Don't give up. It may feel like it, but it's not the end. It's never the end. Second, refuse to quit and resolve to keep your hope burning. The reality is that it's not over, and as each night precedes another sunrise, you can always try again. Babe Ruth struck out 1,330 times, but he also hit 714 home runs. What kind of professional would I be if I could only help 50% of the dogs I work with? Michael Jordan had a record of making slightly less than 1 of every 2 shots he tried. If you ever start to think it's over, remind yourself how much his shoes cost. Third, focus on your goal. Henry Ford said, obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal. Your drive will never outlast your focus. Albert Einstein failed his university entrance exams the first time. You will lose some battles, but if you can keep your eyes trained on your target, you've already won the war. Next, find support. Now there are many out there who will try to cut you down. Paderewski was told his hands were much too small to master the keyboard by his own music teacher. Oftentimes, these are the only voices we hear because we allow them to discourage us from reaching out to find true support. Remember, you are not alone, regardless of how you may feel. There are countless millions struggling with the exact same thing, and finding a partner to help you stay strong could be just as simple as opening up to those around you. A true and reliable friend can be like an oasis in the midst of the driest desert. Take courage, open up, and find support. Some define insanity as doing the same thing over and over again while expecting different results. Always commit to learn from your mistakes, even the mistake of giving up. Don't let me fool you. The past can be a painful thing, but in the words of Rafiki, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. It can help to keep a journal of the things you've tried. Be as detailed as possible. It gives you a clearer, more objective view of the past and of the future. It can save you the trouble of needless repetition. It can help find a solution much faster. And the more detailed your notes, the more efficient your work will be. The more efficient your work will be, the higher the quality of your education. Lastly, pay it forward. There are some levels of knowledge that simply cannot be reached without teaching others. Perhaps it's in the repetition, perhaps it's the variety of problems to solve, or maybe it's just as simple as finding the words to express your thoughts. Who knows? But furthermore, helping others takes our focus off of ourselves and can be just what the doctor ordered for someone doubting their importance, not to mention the value it is to the ones we help. A dog cannot change himself. Blaming ourselves unjustly only leads to resenting ourselves for being human. Simply resenting humans is counterproductive because they are the only ones who can make the changes. The solution is not bought in a store or shared online after 10 easy installments of $9.99.99. You want to know another Disney movie I love? Balto. Our hero Balto is a wolf hybrid trying to fit in amidst all the town dogs. He's rejected by everyone and distrusted because they deem him worthless. When the town finds themselves in trouble, it's Balto who ultimately risks everything to answer the call for a miracle. He encounters every sort of obstacle, from foul weather to dissension amongst his followers, even sabotage from the antagonist. At one point, he finds himself at the bottom of a cliff, barely alive, in a blizzard with no hope for success. Although initially he was too blinded by failure and burdened by guilt to see he'd already done the impossible by virtue of the fact he was still alive, it was here he would finally see the truth. A wolf, like magic, materializes in front of him with a stance as if he'd been standing there all alone. It raises its head and howls. It's a call to rise up and be the wolf he's been all along. At first our hero refuses, allowing the wolf to walk away. But then he remembers the words of his friend. Let me tell you something, Balto. A dog cannot make this journey alone. But maybe, just maybe, a wolf can. From there, Balto finds the courage to try. He finds the truth when he compares his paw print to the wolf's. From there, he goes on to accomplish impossible task after impossible task, even saving an entire town. But he did it as a wolf. As a dog, Balto did what he did to try to prove his worth. As a dog, Balto was ridiculed for his inability to accomplish even the simplest of tasks. As a wolf, Balto did what he did because he was invaluable. As a wolf, Balto has a monument built to honor his memory for his ability to accomplish the impossible. Never be afraid to fail or make mistakes. Have you considered that sometimes we cannot succeed until we fail? Sometimes it is in failure that we realize we haven't been focusing on the right goals, and only then can we make the appropriate changes. Even the best dog is a constant work in progress, and no human will ever be perfect. The real difference between a good owner and a bad one is no external standard, it's internal reality. You needn't prove anything just now, simply be. Being a leader is a present tense thing, so the past is nothing, and the future is what you make it now. The moment Balto became a leader was not when he did the impossible. It was when he decided he would stand up. If I may harp on Balto one more time, it would be to point out a very key note about essence and identity. Consider this. Other people will sometimes ridicule, judge, or otherwise reject you when you or your dogs miss their standards. Instead of accepting their opinions about your value, regard them as simply saying, you are not one of us, which is not necessarily a bad thing. When Balto finally found his courage and howled with the wolf, where were the other dogs he sought so hard to please before? They were at the top of the cliff. losing their minds because wolves were so close by. Why? Wolves eat dogs. If it had been a dog pounding in the snow rather than Balto when that wolf arrived on the scene, things would have gone very differently. Actions speak louder than words. The wolf, in the most absolute and affirmative way, said, "You are a wolf without question, even possibly a member of my own pack, because if you weren't, I would have eaten you." In life, there will be many who will volunteer to tell you what you're not. Yet occasionally, there will come along one who sees you for what you are and will tell you the truth of your identity. There you have a choice. You can listen to the many dogs that come along and try to stop you, or you can listen to the wolf that eats them. So now go to your dog once more. Start where they are. Start where you are. It can only be you, for you care about them and love them like no one else can. They need you to be the leader only you can be. It's okay to be afraid. The question is if you will let fear rule you. Courage must always be in the face of present fear, or it's not courage. Do you feel silly? People laughed at Robert Fulton's idea, his funny looking idea, but Fulton's folly became the first steamboat in 1807. Forget the crowds, forget your own false guilt, stop blaming yourself for things beyond your control. Close your eyes, take a deep breath. It's just you and your dogs now. You have all the time in the world. Start there. And remember, you needn't look too hard for the spectacular. Open your eyes. You are the miracle.